Good evening. We are going to call this meeting to order. Dr. Foley, roll call.
President Reese, members of the board, please let the record show that all members are present.
Thank you. We are going to have a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, and we just ask that you keep Mr. Fowler, our bus driver, and his family, who we lost a couple weeks ago, in your thoughts and prayers.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I move that we approve the agenda as it's presented.
Second.
Any questions or comments regarding the agenda? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries 5-0. Just a moment. Let me get my... Okay. We're going to go on to 4.1, which is our action item. And I move that we provide, or that we approve the direction to our attorney as directed in executive session regarding our Auditor General's report.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Dr. Foley, our superintendent's report.
President Reese, members of the board, we have several meetings coming up. Now, as you know, next week we begin our fall break. And next week, we also have a bond roadshow. We have a couple of them coming up. We also have lots of meetings in October, including a Saturday retreat, where we'll have the opportunity to begin to do some updates on some of our strategic initiatives, including where we are with strategic planning and other things. So lots of updates and forthcoming in these meetings.
President Reese.
Mrs. Anderson?
Dr. Foley, when do the teacher and student recognition start up? Are we going to have those again?
President Reese, Board Member Anderson, those I believe are starting, no. One of the things that, good question, one of the things that we've been working with our administrators on are looking at our second quarter mitigation strategies and loosening some things up. And so we will look at probably second quarter, we're going to be restarting our superintendent visits. You'll notice that those are on your calendars again. And so I believe that we will start those again here real shortly. So we will confirm that and update that in your status report. Okay?
Good question. Thank you. We will move on to board comments.
President Reese.
Mrs. Wilson?
I just wanted to thank every member of the ASBA. I went to the law conference with Dr. Foley and Mrs. Martins, I believe it was 2 weeks ago now, and it was fantastic, and they had just such good presenters this time, and I was very excited to have some board training on that. Also, just thank you to Mr. Moore for doing all of our road shows. I've been to 2 of them so far, and they were fantastic both times, and great questions were brought up for our bond road shows. And a special shout out to our PTOs for conference dinners last week for our middle schools, and this week for elementary. I know they're providing a lot of those conference meals that we don't provide to our teachers, and just being especially encouraging online. I've noticed Chaparral is even reaching out, their PTOs reaching out to other PTOs to encourage them on those fall fundraisers, and all the PTOs and their fall fundraisers that are raising so much money to help our schools in areas that we traditionally do not fund. So thank you to all of those.
Mrs. Anderson?
Did you want to speak? I didn't interrupt you. Okay, I was going to talk about the delegate assembly. Wow, I'm so glad. I loved it, and I would love to go again and again, but I'm glad Ms. Schultz made it, and of course, whoever gets chosen next time, but that was fantastic. I didn't expect anything. I thought it was going to be boring. I even brought, like, schoolwork, because I wasn't sure, like, are there going to be list of people who go, but there was good conversation. I didn't realize they followed Robert's Rule of Order for how they ran the whole meeting. I just want to touch base on a couple of things that I participated in for some votes. There was, on one of them, for revise the school finance formula, but they had taken out, no, that's the wrong one, forgive me. Oh yes, they had taken out revise the funding formula to add funding for student mental health and well-being initiatives, and we said, wait a minute, why are you taking that out? And they said, well, it's over in underneath R, we're talking about our Q funding to improve student achievement by addressing social emotional learning. And we said, well, we understand that, but we wanted to add, you need to put the language back in for health and well-being. There's social emotional, and then there's health and well-being. So I did an amendment with a couple of others. They were on the same page, and we amended it to add that language in there. There's under section 4E, an odd request, oppose any measure that would result in fewer qualified voters from being easily able to vote or register to vote. And that one caused, like, concern, just good conversation of why is this kind of being brought up. Everything is focused on classroom and funding and kids, and then this one's about voting. And it was almost split 55% yay and 45% nay. I mean, it was a hot topic, and some people said, hey, listen, that's more for the county Maricopa, and who's ever handling the voting office. We'd rather you spend more time on the other measures than this. But anyway, I just found that interesting that was on there, and that was definitely something that caused a little contention. But anyway, it was wonderful. Thank you for allowing me to go, and if nobody wants to go next year, I volunteer.
Thank you. Thank you for the update. I'm glad you enjoyed it. It is something to see, for sure, when seeing all these school boards across the state come together and essentially have a large meeting. And it's very interesting also because different parts of our state, different school districts have different needs. And like you said, there was a lot of conversation. There were some hot topics, and what's important to certain areas can be different. So, for sure.
And a lot of personal opinions also got interjected into it, which made a difference. But luckily, they got back on track to be able to more about policy than personal issues. So it was very interesting. I didn't get to vote, but I attended, and it was very good.
You talk about the different districts and their needs. One of them was give all districts the authority to provide affordable housing options to teachers. And I'm like, what? And then the gentleman sitting next to me was pointing out, there are some areas in which they need to get teachers out there. They're driving very far, even for reservation land, but it's also in some of the expensive areas where teachers can't afford to live. And so they're driving very far. And so that was super informative of things I had no idea were going on in the variety of economic status of some of these districts.
I can't remember which district it was, but there was a district who, kind of out in the middle of nowhere, were providing like tiny homes, the tiny houses. They had a little row, like a little neighborhood, a little group of them that they would provide for their teachers. Just the little tiny houses, because they're they're not really within driving distance, and sometimes we forget about that, considering, especially in our area, you can get to any of our schools 10 minutes max, probably. And so I get teachers come from other places, you know, they drive further than that to work. But when we're in this small little area, you don't think that teachers are driving 2 hours in the middle of nowhere just to get to work. So I enjoyed going. Any other board comments? Okay. Then we'll go on request to speak. Ms. Reach, no? Okay. We'll go on to our consent agenda. I move that we approve the consent agenda as it's presented.
Second.
Questions or comments? I just wanted to make note of a couple, especially Mrs. Wilson mentioned, where PTOs are doing stuff and funding things for our schools that don't typically come out of our M&O budget. And Gateway Point PTO purchased 3 shade structures that they've gifted to Gateway, and that's over $17,000. And so we get the shade that they need, and we really appreciate the PTOs, and that's what people's fundraisers and the schools are going to. So we have several people who have donated, and Power Ranch PTO as well. So I also want to give a thank you to Chartwells, who is providing our Veteran Day coins for our Veterans Day celebration coming up in November. So I want to thank them. Those are on our gifts and donations for our consent.
And Power Ranch PTO is also giving something, I think.
Yep, I
And,
mentioned.
Oh, Power Ranch. And then Jennifer Avila? Okay, Avila. Yeah, I thought that was really,
Yeah, donated to Higley Traditional Academy.
right.
Do we know where the shade structures were at Gateway Point? I was just wondering.
They're
what they
going
were.
out front of the building for kiddos at pickup, from my understanding.
Oh, very good.
There will be 3 of them going right along that pickup line for those kiddos to have some shade. And the teachers were really excited about
Oh.
it. I went to their PTO meeting at the beginning of the year, and they were talking about it. And all the money this year went to that. So, and it was a direct donation fundraiser.
That's wonderful. I know shade is much needed across the district for a bunch of
Yeah.
things. That's wonderful. Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries 5-0.
President Reese,
Mrs. Kaler?
I just looking at our 8.12, I'll just put a little plug out there that Higley Unified is hiring bus drivers. Is anybody looking for a job? I know in my dad's kind of retirement years, he was a bus driver here for Higley, and so just our snowbirds are coming back, and maybe some of them need a little job, so.
Thank you. Yes, we are hiring bus drivers.
I think we're hiring a lot of positions, actually. Dr. Foley, do you want to mention any others that we're hiring that you might want to share?
Please check our website. We're a wonderful place to work.
Yes, check our website. All right, we're going to go on to 9.1, the monthly governing board report, our M&O financial report for July of 2021. Mr. Moore, is there anything specific you want to point out?
Good evening, Board Member Reese, President Reese and members of the board. There's nothing specific. This is our first month's financials for July. Everything is in line with what we would expect. A lot of our ending balances are being finalized as we finalize our annual financial report, which we'll be presenting at the October 13th board meeting. So,
anyone have any questions for Mr. Moore? As always, thank you. We appreciate getting that information and being able to stay on top of it, knowing where we're at, what we've encumbered and what we have. And so I can tell you I always appreciate that. All right, we're going to go on to 9.2, which is going to be some policy revisions. Dr. Foley.
President Reese, members of the board, as you know, policy is one of the jobs that is plentiful and that comes every year. And we will share with you that in July, ASBA, because out of the legislative session comes updates to policies, because we need to make sure our policies are in alignment with the law. So out comes a document this summer that looked like a dictionary that we began working through. I want to give a special thank you to Darlene Reach, who, did you know, in addition to being a wonderful governing board secretary, she is also known as the policy goddess around here, who has helped us begin to go through each of these new policies and helped the cabinet and our team begin to identify what are new pieces that are added or modified for us to review, to operationalize, then to bring to you for review. So you'll begin to notice there's a theme on several of our meetings over the next several months as we go through new policies, because with the dictionary that came to us, each of those will come to you, and then the joy is there's more going to come. There was a lot of work that came out of the legislative session, and so it's a good part of the update. It's a time-consuming process. Tonight, though, we are starting off simple. There are 6 policies, and one of the things you saw in your packet, there are slight additions. Sometimes if they have a copyright at the top, that means that we're recommending exactly what ASBA would say. So basically, they took a look at the policy, they felt through the need of any new addition to add a piece that clarified, that keeps us in compliance and keeps our policies updated and relevant. If we decide to modify, sometimes we can modify policies to customize them a certain way so that it fits our own district. We no longer then have the copyright sign at the top of it, but when we do that, we work with our attorneys to make sure we didn't customize this in any way that would contradict state law or make our policies, violate anything. So tonight, you've got 5 policies that we are recommending. These are some standard policies that we are bringing to you that are typical ones that had been updated. The advisory committees, and one of the things you saw on our summary is we just kind of summarized exactly what ASBA said. Your team reviewed it, goes, these are perfect. We wouldn't modify it, change it. So the first 5 advisory committees, rules of order, board member development opportunities, audits and financial monitoring, and bus driver requirements, trainings, and responsibilities are all keeping our policies up to date and the most compliant as ASBA would recommend them to be. The instructional school year and instructional time model one, ASBA had one, but it was a very generic one, and we figured while we've gone to all this trouble to have 2 public hearings, let's make our policy match what we have prescriptively put out there, so it's our policy. Thus, we worked with our legal counsel to craft it. They helped us so that when we finish our public hearing tonight, we now have a policy that matches and mirrors that. So tonight you have 6 policies there, 5 of which are ASBA copyright, and we support and agree with. The other one is modified to match our need, which would then make our policy up to date as recommended, because that was one of them they wanted done. This is the informational session part of it. Of course, you can talk and have questions, and if there's anything we want to discuss, we can. Typically, what we do is a second read, and then in the action, you approve it. Historically, usually we would do it on one night, or we would do it one meeting and then come back the next meeting and bring it back for you to approve. With the amount that we're going to have, and we're going to start a policy party here as we go through these, the thought would be that you can waive a second read and approve them in the same night if they're pretty straightforward. If, for instance, there was a policy you went, what about, could we, should we would bring it back for you to review and then a second read. So this way, it'll allow us to be efficient as we try and bring our policies up to speed. As you can imagine, in the era of COVID, management policy updates and revision hasn't been the priority. Hence, I think the reason why ASBA sent out a thick document, it's time for us to get caught up. So that's our informational. You've had these. Are there any questions, concerns with any of these policies tonight?
Dr. Foley, I just wanted to touch on what you just kind of said, that the ones that have a C copyrighted, they're the ASBA policy. Being part of the ASBA, we have their policy bridge, which gives us access to their policies. And we have the ability to adapt them. Just as we were just talking about at the delegate assembly, there's a lot of different needs. Different districts have different needs, and sometimes we have the need to change them. But also, we receive our board packets, and this information's in there. If there is a policy that we do need to pull and maybe have discussion, or have on here and have discussion and bring for a second read, if we just get a heads up for that, we can always put it out here, have discussion on it, and then we can have a separate item for that for a second read. But we do receive our board packets ahead of time for us to review, to read over. We have time to submit questions to get those answered. So if we have a question about a policy, we can get it answered. When we get those answers, if we're still not comfortable with it, please, just give us a heads up so we can list it that way, and we can have discussion. And we can have discussion anyway, but if we feel that there's one that needs additional revisions, then that way we can try and move through some of these. Like you said, we have a lot, and try and move through some of these, at least standard ones that aren't changing at all, fairly quickly. So, any questions on any of these policies? Mrs. Anderson?
Thank you. To understand for the instructional time model policies mirroring what we're talking about in the public hearing. In the public hearing is just announcing what we're going to do. There's no vote, there's no formal, it's just what we're doing. So this policy, if approved today, just goes into effect with everything. Okay, thank you.
Which this is the second public hearing. So it's gonna simply reiterate what the first one did, so.
And you saw the policy requires, it spells it out, that we're legislatively, we're required to have the two. Our policy spells out that's what we did to have it. And so it customized it to the included the legislation, but also customized it to our district. So it's more our policy that aligns to our practice.
Any other comments, questions? Okay. We'll move on then to our action items for 10.1. I move that we approve the policy revisions as they've been presented.
Second.
All right. Any questions, comments? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries 5-0. We will go on to 10.2. I move that we approve the addendum for the Chandler Gilbert Community College Intergovernmental Agreement for an embedded advisor as it's presented.
Second.
Questions or comments?
President Reese?
Mrs. Kaler?
It's not so much as a, I guess this is a comment. I love this. I'm all for it. I just wish when it comes down to dual enrollment, that there could be a simpler way to enroll our students. Every year, I feel like it's going to get better with CGCC. It's just going to get better, and it didn't this year. And last year was rough. And my husband, he's a smart guy, and I mean, he had to go in to the school and have a conversation with our liaison, who's wonderful, by the way. But I just feel like there's got to be some kind of better way that we can get dual enrollment. There's got to be a better way. I don't know what it is. It's way beyond my little brain of technology, but it just is not smooth for anybody.
It seems to be the biggest complaint that I've seen. I'm not there, but that's the biggest thing.
Especially the first time going through it, it is a lot to do. The second year, I think it gets a little easier. Board Member Kaler, I don't know
Well,
if it
well,
got
what
easier.
happened- I
I
don't-
felt like
I
it
don't
was
know if it's-
easier the second time through.
It
because
could have
you-
been because I have twins, and I'll be
Okay.
honest, that can be an issue sometimes because children have the same birth date, and for some reason, the computers just melt down with it. I don't know, but it's just crazy that it's so difficult, and I just wish we could make it easier. I don't know what
College
the answer
enrollment
is.
was easier than dual enrollment, I will say. College enrollment for my son was easier than dual enrollment.
Any
was.
college application is easier than dual enrollment for especially twins. I'm sorry, I'm complaining, I know, but it's an issue.
President Reese, members of the board, we will share, we have meetings with them and provide feedback, and what we can do is probably work with Jasmine to identify what is the best vehicle for us to share this. I will tell you, your feedback are echoed across the valley, and as a parent, I had similar experiences too. And I think that we make steps forward with some resources, and some processes take forever to catch up with those resources. So we will continue to share that feedback.
I didn't have to do that this year, but I didn't either.
It's my last year.
I know, but
Amy's last chance
I
to
know that
complain and get it
it had
fixed.
changed. The hard part, I think people also don't expect is essentially you have to re-register again. And when you're dealing with minors, then they have locks on their account, and they're like, well, just do this, and you're like, I can't, the account's locked, and they're like, oh, yeah.
We're
And
paying for it, but we're not allowed to see it.
exactly. Well, then you have to get permission. Your kids have to give you permission to talk to the college counselor, and it's like, I mean, literally, you want my money, but you won't talk to me, and they're a minor, and they're like, yep. So I know it's frustrating, but yeah, I know that they just recently changed their process too. It's like, it's a 3-step process or something, where you do something, and then they send you an email, and then you have to follow that email and go do something again with photo ID, and then you have to upload it. It made it where it couldn't all be done in one process because they had to send you stuff. So yes, please share that, and I'm sorry if people are still having issues. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries. And hopefully with our embedded advisor, fingers crossed, hopefully it's at least helpful, somebody who knows their system, but yes. All right, we are going to go on to our public hearing. So I move that we recess our general meeting for our public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're now recessed, and Dr. Foley, you want to go forward with our public hearing?
President Reese, members of the board, I'm going to ask Dr. Borzich to do a quick review of our presentation on our instructional time model. It will rhyme with our first, that there has not been any changes with what we presented, so she will quickly go over that, and that way we can answer any questions, so we meet the legislative requirements.
President Reese and members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to present this. This is our instructional time model, and to recap from our last presentation, the reason that we have the instructional time model is because it essentially takes the place of the distance learning plan, which was in place last year for the purposes of remote learning and prior to the establishment and approval of our AOI. So now that we have an online learning academy or an online learning school, our distance learning plan is no longer in effect, and we have come up with this instructional time model. The purpose of the instructional time model really is to identify what it would look like if our students were out of the classroom for more than a day because we required them to be out of the classroom. So obviously the most common thing that we think of right now is COVID, but it could be simply another, a water main break, a fire, anything that would keep the students away from the building for a period of longer than 1 day. And so we are required, of course, to get our time model approved, not only by the governing board, but then submitted to the Arizona Department of Education, where it will stay on file. It will not expire unless there's something that comes up that causes us to have to revise it or make a change to it. Next slide. So in elementary schools, just to recap, if we're required to temporarily transition to virtual learning, synchronous learning will be offered for students, and students will attend daily live sessions. Attendance will be taken for students on a daily basis, and we'll be able to mark them as being present when they sign in. We'll be using the Canvas learning management system, and that will help us to track attendance so that we can submit that as being a payable day. Lessons will be shorter, and the duration of the assignments will be provided through the district's learning management system. There will be live instruction, much the way there was with our distance learning plan, and then prescribed instructional or independent work times for students to complete that work as well. So you can see a sample. This is a sample of what it might look like in our elementary schools. Secondary schools, if they're required to temporarily transition to virtual learning or asynchronous learning, students will be expected to participate in complete daily assigned work, but attendance will be taken on a period basis, so every period or every class that they have versus just once a day. They'll be marked then as remote or as present for any of those classes that they sign into during the day. There will be no direct instruction provided if only a portion of the kids in the school are required to be remote. It'll be more of an independent learning opportunity for them, along with within our Canvas management system. However, at the secondary level, if the entire school is required to temporarily transition to remote learning, then the learning becomes synchronous because teachers wouldn't be required to teach on campus and off campus simultaneously or online simultaneously. So they will have some live instruction if a situation like that occurs. And then, once again, we'll be using the Canvas management system. So what you see there is just a sample schedule of what that might look like. Do you have any questions?
Looks great, and I hope we don't have to go there. Thank you
I
for
would
the hard
agree.
work, though, to put it all together.
President Reese, members of the board, I think one of the things, like per our policy, if we were to have to change our instructional time model, it would come back to you in 2 public hearings. So this would be what our plan looks like in the event that we need to utilize it, and if anything had to change, we would come back to you in 2 public hearings.
Anyone have any questions? Anyone? No? Okay. Thank you for taking the time to do that. Then we will adjourn our public hearing and we will resume our regular board meeting. So we will go on to, oh, no. No, no, we approved the policy of it, so, no, I was like, wait. And actually, that takes us to the end of our meeting. Do we have any other future agenda items? I just want to take a moment to thank Dr. Foley and the staff. It's been crazy. I think kind of our theme has been, please let us get back to educating. You guys are professionals and you're educational professionals, and you do an amazing job educating our kids and our staff and HUSD. So it's been difficult, and I know you've had so many irons in the fire because we are trying to continuously educate our community, our kids, with the quality that our community has come to expect. And I think as this board has come to expect. And you guys are working so hard. And then we have to do this public meeting, and then we have other COVID things, and then we have laws changing, and then there are so many things that you guys are having to deal with. Bus driver shortages. I mean, when we thought we've talked about in the past bus driver shortages, but we were not even close to where we are right now, like serious. We were concerned previously, and we are so much lower than we are right now. And we want to get, all we want to do is get these kids to school so we can teach them. And I think you guys are working so hard, and thank you. Mr. Moore, everything you're doing with our bond, our Auditor General report, I mean, just all this stuff that takes away from, I get it's all encompassed in your responsibilities and your scope of work, but these are all extra things that take away from your daily focus, and so we recognize you're putting more time in, and thank you. And Ms. Richards, I can't even, thank you. I don't know how you're getting through each day, so, but I think that we need to recognize everything you guys are doing. I hope, my fingers crossed, that you're able to take some time. Mr. Lotzenhauser, I know you got to go golf and you got to take a day, but everything you guys are dealing with that is so beyond education that in this industry we've never had to deal with, and yet you're managing to juggle it all. So I just want to put it out there and say thank you for everything all of you guys are doing. Our site administrators dealing with TikTok issues, that people are encouraging kids to do stuff that we've just never, it takes away our time from our main focus. And so we know it, we recognize it. I have no doubt our community knows it and they recognize it, but I know some days the bad just so overshadows the good. But you guys are doing good. Thank you. We recognize you're working hard. So keep it up. Please try and get some rest over break if you can. Hopefully nothing big is coming down the pike, I hope. Who knows? But I just think it's important that you guys know that we do recognize that. So thank you.
President Reese.
Mrs. Kaler.
I echo those sentiments, and I know over at Higley High they took a fund together and they actually blessed all the custodians and security that had been dealing with destructive and disgusting things in bathrooms. And so again, the good of humanity is still very alive and well in Higley, and I appreciate that very much. But in the same token, then I'm going to speak to the kids. Please knock it off. Do not come to our schools and destroy things, because everything costs money to us, and that money needs to be used to educate you and not to be being in repairs. And so I'm really upset that kids can think that this stuff's okay, because it's just not.
Well, and be the leaders that we know that they are, that this is out there, it's encouraging it, recognizing this is wrong, it's ridiculous. We know that they're leaders, and your best leaders don't follow those things. So, yes, and thank you for bringing that up.
There's a human on the other side that has to clean up the mess that shouldn't have to.
So we know everyone throughout Higley is working hard, and we are dealing with so much more that goes beyond what I think everyone got in all of this for, and we're faced with new issues, and we're learning it, and it's a learning curve, and we all have to adjust and adapt, and what used to not be that's not us. It has rolled, and it is us, and we're learning how to roll with that and incorporate it, and that's all of us. So, yes, thank you.
Every time I talk to Dr. Foley, I tell her spring is going to be the semester where we could just get back to education. And so spring is what we're holding out for.
We are hopeful.
Spring, Do you dare?
Excuse me, spring 2022.
I was gonna
Yes,
say,
yes.
Do you
spring
dare, do
2022.
you dare put a year on that?
Yes, I'm putting it out into the universe, spring 2022.
Everyone wished for that. All right, well, with that, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, that motion carries 5-0. I hope our families have a great fall break and be safe.